sustained counterterrorism strategy. This strategy of taking out terrorists who threaten us. So this is our strategy. And in each of these 4 parts of our strategy.
Strategy, eh? Better late than never. So if you already hate the president, then you probably hate that speech. And then if you love Obama, you probably didn't watch it anyway, too busy with Fashion Week. But if this is war, then let's dispense with the team sport of politics and support our guy. He didn't say everything I wanted, but dare I say, he sounded like us. Which leads me to this. If cross-dressing as a righty gets the country behind you, then why not just get the sex change? Come to the right side. We're more fun and we're always armed. And let's stop insulting the right when acting like them actually saves your rear. So I'm with you, Mr. President, on these conditions. Islam. Say it.
Now let's make 2 things clear. ISIL is not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents. And the vast majority of ISIL's victims have been Muslim. And ISIL is certainly not a state.
We get it. Not all Muslims are terrorists. But the I in ISIL doesn't stand for Igloo. Delinking ISIL from what drives it insults the moderates you seek to address. And why this?
I want the American people to understand how this effort will be different from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It will not involve American combat troops fighting on foreign soil.
Again, why tell the enemy what we won't do? Imagine if the Bulls did that in '96. Don't worry, Jordan's benched. Everything should be on the table, including al-Baghdadi's bullet-ridden corpse. Finally, you, the president, must believe in this fight. No 18 holes after a head rolls. Yeah, I know you're mad the electorate put global terror before global warming. And you're right about climate change. Since you've been in charge, it's gotten hotter. In Libya, the Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Detroit. You're worse for the environment than coal. But if you don't want to be the world's policeman, then be the world's garbage man and take out the trash. You don't need another Nobel Prize. That doorstop helped no one but you. So, Bob, I want to go to you first because you predicted this. You said there was going to be a lot of the word strategy. What did you make of this?
That it was a strategy.
Yes.
No, I think what he did here was, you can say is somewhat late coming to the table, but I've always thought the strategy idea was nuts. I mean, the strategy is to get rid of these guys, right?
Yeah.
The question I have is when he talks about a coalition, I wish he had a couple of people to name. That would have been helpful. But I think that there are already targets picked out in Syria, and I think that they're going to go for them next week. And I think here's the problem for the Republicans: is you got to be very careful about criticizing the president at a time like this. If it works, his expectations are so low that if it works, he's going to get very big marks out of it.
Yeah, well, that's why I say he's our guy. But I had some conditions, Bob. I thought you liked that.
I did like your conditions, Greg. Was one of them to join the Boy Scouts? I forgot the... Okay.
Eric, it was good. Was it believable?
Yeah, because it didn't go far enough. By the way, the reason why he says if you threaten America, you will find a safe haven, because he created all the safe havens for them to find, and that's where they're hiding right now. Remember when he said, we will pull out December 31st, 2011. So January 1st, 2012 was when al-Qaeda in Iraq started to grow and grow and grow, become bigger, and then turn into what is now ISIS. So, again, as you point out, you're benching Jordan next week. So, guess what? He should have he should never have gotten to this. The $500 million, so what? I'm very concerned that the $500 million to train FSA vetted fighters, really, because we were about to hand over a lot of money to them one time before, and they end up being ISIS. I don't know. I didn't hear anything that was really crazy other than we're going to continue to airstrike in Syria. By the way, you better step it up and you better do it fast.
Kimberly, what did President Obama say anything to you that was surprising? Was it enough? Should we do more? How did you feel?
I thought he looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But he didn't move me.
No, he didn't move you.
He didn't. And he looked good today, too. I think this was smart strategy for him, actually. The political strategy is the one that I saw. Of course, he said what he needed to say. He did it on the eve of 9/11. The president, speaking in a primetime address, suggests that it is more serious, that this is something different, significant, makes people sort of sit up and pay attention. That was a good move on his part. So I think in terms of, that layout, it went well for him. I would have liked to, of course, see him go further, but at least now he can't back down from what he has said.
All right, Dana, what did you make of this speech? I saw you on a number of shows last night where you performed admirably. Did you find it a patriotic speech or a political speech?
Well, I think any primetime address from any president is going to be a patriotic speech, and it's a moment, and it tries to focus the mind. And here comes the president, and they announce it, and it's kind of a big deal. So I always think about a presidential speech, though, that how's the after effect? Okay?
Yeah.
Does it hold up? And there's 4 basic things. Looking back, about almost 24 hours now, did the tone match the seriousness of the moment? I'd say yes. Does the policy hold up to scrutiny? The strategy that he announced? I would say arguably no. In particular, the 2 examples he gave were that this was going to be like fighting in Yemen and Somalia. Today, the State Department says, don't travel to Yemen. And it's also, I think it's not holding up because they're so different. You have Al-Shabaab in Somalia say they are not a military like ISIS.
Yeah.
That is actually now a military, not just a terrorist group. The third thing is, on a morning after a speech like that, does your coalition start to form? Do they? First of all, I think it should have been lined up beforehand. He should have locked those things down. That's why I think the speech was about a week too early. I think spending another week to try to lock down those allies, to try to make sure that we had it, would have been hard politically for them to stomach another week, but it would have been the right thing to do to have that. The fourth thing is a really big one. It's not just a congressional issue. It's this question about the authorization to use military force. About a month ago, the White House sent a letter to John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, asking for the Congress to withdraw the authorization to use military force, that they didn't need it anymore, they never liked it in the first place. And just last week, they were asked, do you still believe that? Do you still want it repealed? They said, yes, it was the right thing to do. Now today, they are actually trying to base their decision, the president's decision to strike in Syria, on the authorization to use military force, which they actually just said that they don't want. So on several grounds, I think it's very shaky, and I think it was about a week too early for them to give the speech.
Well, let me ask you this, Bob. President Bush had done the same thing that President Obama did, which was make a distinction between radical Islam and Islam, saying that these, and I think even Eric, you mentioned that he was going to do this before. Do you think that that's helpful?
No, sure. I think it's helpful. The question is whether they're going to step up to the plate or not. I mean, he made a point, I think, pretty directly that he expected the Muslim countries would join in the coalition. They've got the most to lose of anybody else. And if you don't have one, if you don't have, you probably could get Jordan. We should get Saudi Arabia of all groups.
Well, they're going to train these guys in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there is participation.
Yeah, there is participation. But, I mean, I think they've got a pretty good military. And I think that there's a way to, even in some ways, to get Iran to be participate in this, because they're all frightened of these guys. And they are 100 miles from their capitals. And so I think he needs to do it. If he doesn't come up with one of them, I don't know what you do at that point.
But he mentioned a, quote, broad coalition.
Right.
And today we heard the Brits say, we're not part of that. We're not going to do any airstrikes.
And then an hour later they said, oh, wait, maybe we will. I mean, there's not solid.
But here's the point. If I'm going to go to the American people and say I have a broad coalition, have a name. Give me one name. He didn't name.
I know, but this is what I'm saying. I think
not one country that said.
Look what was happening in this country. Everybody's right. So far, so good. We're all in. Deal is, it was 9/11, and he addressed the country on the eve of 9/11. That was purposeful. And yes, he probably could have benefited from having a stronger coalition, putting a name on it, having something a little bit more solid, okay, to lay hands on if he waited a week. But they didn't see it that way politically.
What do you, John Kerry says we're not at war. Do you?
I don't understand it.
That's a bizarre comment.
He calls it a counter-terror effort.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't we do that anyway?
Yeah.
You actually don't have primetime addresses to announce counter-terror efforts. You just actually.
Is it because he doesn't want to have to go to, doesn't want to have to go to Congress?
This is the other reason I think that they gave the speech a week too early. Because they're not all on the same page.
Right.
And they're rushing it. And I think that it would be a better effort if they had just waited. But so now you have a question. Is the Secretary of State and the President, are they not on the same page? I mean, are we at war with ISIS? Are we at war more broadly in the global war on terror? Or are we just going to do pinprick strikes against every group that pops up? Because after ISIS, then what? They will try to continue to reconstitute themselves.
Well, can I just play a little semantics here? I don't think President Obama said we're at war either, right? Yeah, so he avoided the word war because the way I see it, if they do declare a war, you got to go to Congress, and everyone knows with 53 days left before an election, there's no Democrat that wants to put his name down that he voted for war when they basically run on
Unless
it.
it
Which is an
benefits
interesting
them,
thing,
their
because
constituents.
now, once again, the president will rely on Republicans to give him national security authorization, which I think that they will give.
Yeah,
Where
but
does the left,
they'll
by
give
the
it
way,
to
Bob?
them. Well, I mean, first of all, if you look at the endangered species called Democrats in red states in the Senate, I don't think any one of them would vote against that. I mean, I think they're...
In those particular states, sure. It just depends on their core constituency in that area.
I would think that that's probably the case in most places. Look,
right now,
public opinion didn't make this severe change out of nothing, out of whole cloth. It was because they saw something that was a gross and something that will remember. And I think you'd be crazy to be against it or let the Republicans.
So why not vote? Then why not do it the right way and go to a vote?
Well, if you're going, the question is,
no, why not? Why wouldn't President Obama say, "I'm going to bring it to your Congress"?
Tell us why or why not.
Well, the question is, you'd have to have a separate piece of legislation because it wouldn't be under the War Powers Act.
Bob, they can do it tomorrow.
I think that, and look, and you have even people like Senator Marco Rubio who is saying the president has all the authority he needs and we back him on that. Can I just mention one thing on public opinion? Because I think the analysis is a little bit wrong on this question of how quickly public opinion turned. It wasn't only just because of the beheadings. I think this has been building for about 4 months, in particular over the summer, when you had the President of the United States constantly under criticism and scrutiny, and some would say attack, for fundraisers, golf, not paying attention to these things as they were building. And then I think that it's almost like when the beheadings happened, that was when it was like, oh my gosh, what have you been doing? And that's when they rushed it, and that's why I think they kind of missed a moment. They still will get support from me, from other Republicans, from the American people to do what they need to do. It's just that we have to remember, it's because of his inaction and decisions to not act that we are in this position, we are in a crisis position, and every single answer is much more complicated and much more complex because of things we haven't done before.
Right.
But that's a repetitive theme. I mean, we have seen this consistently with this presidency and this administration, a failure to act decisively in a prescribed amount of time, or then later we end up having to clean up the mess.
Well, but let's keep in mind now that although ISIS has a lot of American military equipment, they would have had a lot more if we decided to arm the moderates, as we call them, in Syria. You know, Obama's taking a lot of heat on that, but it wasn't quite that clear. They were there then. They could have picked that equipment up quite easily. And
it is bizarre, too, that the president just 2 weeks ago absolutely dismissed the people that are actually making up the Free Syrian Army. It was dismissed like, oh, they're just
pharmacists.
They're pharmacists and community organizers.
Dentists.
I guess that wasn't qualified. And now we are basing America's future national security on this ragtag bunch. You know what those guys want?
Bad news
They want their
bears.
freedom. That's where they're fighting. That's why they left their job as pharmacists, because they got kicked out by the dictator Assad. They've had 200,000 of their fellow citizens murdered by the government. That's where they're fighting, and I'm all for helping them.
All right. Let's go. More analysis of the president's address to the nation on ISIS when the 5 returns.